Was the Jalen Hurts game as good as we all think?
He clearly played better than he had previously. But yeah, Hurts played a lot better. I thought his best throw of the game was actually, believe, was it 3rd and 15 or 2nd and 15 where he hit Brown on the curl route.
Third and 15.
Was it 3rd and 15?
Pretty sure it's 3rd and 15. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was actually 17 yards on 3rd and 16. You're right. He looked. The play was designed to go to trips, Frank, and he looked to trips and then came back to Brown, settling in the void on the numbers. And that was his best play of the game in terms of understanding what he was seeing, knowing where to go with the football when the initial read was taken away.
I'm curious if you had enough tape or if you've seen Shipley. I'm a big Clemson fan as well too. I grew up on the East Coast, and I didn't know if maybe I was hoping Jeremiah Trotter would get in some too to see if maybe you had any thoughts on what he might look like.
I did both guys in detail coming out of Clemson. Really liked them both. He's just a really good player, both as a runner and as a receiver. And he's tough, he's aggressive, he's physical. He's just not big enough to be, a foundation back. So he's going to have to be a complement. But he's going to play in this league. We'll see how it goes. You never know what happens down the road. You don't know if Kenny Gainwell gets re-signed. You never know how this stuff plays out. But Shipley's going to play in this league. And Jeremiah Trotter, I loved his tape. The reason he was a 5th-round pick was obviously size. I thought his college tape was better than Nakobe Dean's college tape. But, again, we'll see how that plays out as well.
So my question for you is about Stoutland, the scheme, and how they develop things. How do you think they develop their blocking scheme throughout the week to specifically eliminate a threat?
Boy, that's a really hard question because you'd have to be there to know the detail. But one thing we do know is that they never have to help Lane Johnson. So right away, you're in a position where your right tackle is going to block one-on-one, no matter who he's blocking. They started out this game, Kevin, with letting Fred Johnson block one-on-one against Hendrickson initially, and he did a really good job. Now, as the game progressed, there were snaps in which they helped him and they chipped. But it's mostly in edge rushers that you're concerned about. Interior guys, you always can have some help. So, you mentioned Aaron Donald. Obviously, Aaron Donald's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer and is a phenomenal player. But, I think inside you always can have some help. And when you can start everything you do with the fact that you never have to help your right tackle, that's a really, really good starting point.
Did they keep in extra protection? Because it seems like they got close, but never really pressured him all that hard, except for that one sack they got.
Yeah, there's one play, I don't know if you're referring to this specific play where he actually was able to avoid and then hit Gesicki. And
yeah,
it turned out to be a first down on 3rd and long, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 3rd and 18 or something.
Yeah, I forget the distance of the play, but yeah.
But for the most part, they couldn't get to it.
No, well, Burrow, first of all, there's a lot of quick game with the Bengals. That's Burrow's game. Burrow is a quick game guy. Everything is rhythmic. Everything is timing based. The ball's going to come out. And he has a knack, which is one reason he's Joe Burrow. He has a knack for avoiding and navigating, pressure and navigating the space in the pocket. He's just one of those guys. Obviously their O-line through the years hasn't been great, and there have been years where he's got sacked a lot where he literally had no chance. There were times guys were on him in a heartbeat, but he's really, really good at kind of avoiding and navigating. And like I said, when they're at their best, it's quick game. And so you're not really going to get there. It's hard to.
Where's Quinyon Mitchell also as a rookie? Where's he at for you so far in this development?
I think he's playing well, and they're starting to play more press with him. You guys may remember when they played the Giants, he had a serious rep of press man versus neighbors where he just jammed him right at the line of scrimmage and disrupted his route, and that's where Jones wanted to go with the football. And so they're clearly getting more comfortable with him. They're teaching him how to play press, because playing press isn't just a matter of going out there and say, go hit the receiver. There's technique, there's footwork. A lot of guys who've never played press, what happens if they sort of fall back on their heels and then they get beat, which you can recover in college, but you can't recover in the NFL. So you have to teach guys how to play press with their hands, their footwork. They're clearly, I know for a fact that they're working with him on that, And I just think he's getting better.
On the second drive where he got that sack, is that where what you were kind of referring to? Did you see that on that sack?
Okay. Oh, Smith, he won with speed off the edge versus Mims, and Williams cleaned up after Smith made the initial hit. Yeah. Yeah, he did a really nice job there. Mims, I think, was a beat late off the ball, and it kind of allowed Smith to get a kind of a quick start. But I have to tell you, the last 2 weeks, I think Smith has had some snaps, and this is what you want to see. He had some snaps where he's never going to be powerful in the sense you think of power, but where he was able to use his hands. I mentioned another play too, where he knocked away the hands of was it the right tackle or the left tackle? I can't remember, but he knocked his hands away and he did a really, really nice job. So, they're teaching him as well. That's something else you have to teach guys is how to use their hands. But I think that, referring to your point, one of the main points with pass rushers who want to win on the high side, meaning to the outside, is you have to be able to bend and flatten your path because otherwise you just get pushed past the quarterback. He can do that to some degree. That's something he can do because he is, he's an athlete. But you can't just live on running by guys. You have to be able to play
True.
off them. But I think he's showing some incremental improvement. I'm real anxious to see him
Huge.
continue.
It's huge.
How do they scheme the defense where it ends up where the end is covering the best receiver that the Bengals have?
There's a defensive call. You don't know for sure where, like for instance, on that Chase touchdown, he was on the other side of the field, and they started out in an empty set, and Burrow pulled in both the running back and Chase. So Chase was offset to the boundary side, and Smith was actually the D end on the field side, and Chase crossed the formation, and actually that he was not the primary receiver here. But the Eagles played it really well, and then the play just went on, and Smith, based on the coverage, had to pick. There was only one receiver to that side of the field to where Smith was. That was the tight end Gesicki. So Gesicki ran his route, he broke inside, and then Chase crossed the formation in the backfield and came to Smith, and Smith was the only guy who could pick him up. That wasn't a design coverage to say, Smith, you have Chase. That's just the way it played out. But sometimes that can happen. Sometimes that's part of coverage where your outside on the ball defender is responsible for certain routes.
Has his impact really been the reason that catapulted like how well the defense is playing?
In today's NFL, a slot corner is really a critical player in the defense because you play so many snaps out of sub defense. So that player it has to be more. Think of it this way: to be a really good slot corner in the league, which is why I always wonder why guys don't draft slot corners higher because they end up being really critical players. Because here's what you have to be able to do. You got to be able to play man coverage on slot receivers, which means they have two-way goes. You don't have the sideline as your friend. You've got to be able to play underneath zone coverage, both as a hook defender in the middle of the field and as a flat defender. You've got to be able to blitz. You've got to be able to play the run. So there's a lot of things you have to do as a slot defender. You can't just say, with an outside corner, oh, well, just throw him in the slot. There's a lot of things you have to be able to do at a reasonably high level. And there's also so many factors involved in the run game, the way teams line up with their fronts, where the slot has to be a primary part of run defense, being either a C or a D gap player. So he has to be involved where there's bigger bodies. So DeJean, first of all, is a really big body. He's strong. He's athletic. He's more straight line athletic than shifty athletic, which is why he's probably better suited where he is than playing outside corner. But he brings so much, and then you get into his underneath zone coverage and his ability to recognize and be aware of route concepts. So he adds so much to the defense, so far beyond what Maddox could do, that it makes the defense significantly better, particularly when they play zone coverage.
Okay, so with what you saw of the Bengals defense, with our upcoming opponents, where might there be some similarities that the Eagles offense can exploit? I'm sorry.
Jacksonville's defense, they have a new coordinator this year named Ryan Nielsen, who last year was in Atlanta and played a boatload of man coverage in Atlanta and had players who could play it reasonably well. They wanted to do that in Jacksonville, and they did not have Tyson Campbell until last week. And because of that, he started out playing man, and they were getting their ass burned. And then he backed off, and he started to play a lot more zone because you can't play man if your corners can't play man. So I don't know now that Tyson Campbell's back if he's going to try to play more man, because Campbell can line up and play man. But the Bengals they've got issues at corner, so they're relatively. Lou Anarumo wants to be really multiple, and there are games this year. He's the D coordinator for the Bengals. There are games this year where he's been really multiple. He was not really in this game. There could be multiple reasons for that. One could be the Hurts running factor. You know, you have to be careful because Hurts is going to drop back, and if he sees a lane, he's going to take off and run, and you don't want to be burned by that, particularly on third down. You know, I think he does feel like he has to protect his corners a little bit. So, you know, he doesn't do a lot of blitzing. I'm not sure he has great linebackers who were blitzers anyway. You know, that's the other thing. You have to have players who are good at that. You know, not everybody is a good blitzer. Just because you call a blitz doesn't mean it automatically works. Logan Wilson is a really good player, but he's not a great blitzer. Jermaine Pratt's a really solid linebacker, but he's not a great blitzer. So they don't have those kinds of players.